Hello, and we're back. D, whatever you're doing, you're loud.
I know I should have did it before, but as soon as I start running all this stuff, my mouse gets slow. So I go to a wired mouse, OG wired mouse.
All right, so we're back, and today's show we're going to talk about DevSecOps. For those of you that are joining us on YouTube, please drop your city and career field. For those of you that are on, I'm assuming we're streaming on LinkedIn too and Twitter.
We are. I got a notice, so I'm not. I haven't looked at LinkedIn yet, but it was giving me something that it might be wonky or might not be. So we got
Okay,
our
what
fingers
about
crossed.
Facebook?
No, I did this. No, we're on Twitter and YouTube tonight.
Okay, so Twitter and YouTube. Shout out to everybody on Twitter. Shout out to everybody on YouTube. Please drop your city and what you do inside of the chats. As far as who we are, we're Women in Linux. I'm Tam. This is yeah, that way. That way. That's D. And tonight we're gonna talk about DevSecOps, DevOps, when you should use it, when you shouldn't use it. We got a great person coming on tonight. I'm excited about having Amy on
I know
tonight.
she's back. I mean,
I know, right?
we talked to
And,
her in the past, and it's always a good conversation
and
with
not only
Amy.
that, Amy was like, I don't want to see just you, T. I want to see D too. Is D joined? So D got to be a part of it. That's just what it is. And let me share my screen right now. So then we're gonna walk through some stuff. Oh, I did have it shared. Okay, I'll go back and share it again. All right. So let me go and share my screen. All right. If you don't know who we are, we're Women in Linux. You can find us on social media everywhere, Women in Linux, as you see on YouTube, Women in Linux. We got to get our TikTok stuff going as well too. Been kind of slow on that. However, if you want to connect with us, you have to connect with us on Slack. Well, you can hit connect on our website. You jump you down here to putting in your email address, and then you'll connect with us on Slack. Once you connect with us on Slack, we have and you need the Slack app. We have an array of information as well too. If you want to shop with us, it's our 5-year anniversary. You can come here, shop with us, hit all products so you can see everything. I think it's 3 different pages. I know it's cold in some areas. I've seen some of you out with some of our stuff in terms of your sweatshirts, in terms of the handbags, clutches, so forth. And also, I want to say this for everybody that gave on Giving Tuesday, I appreciate you. You don't know how much that meant for us because it just comes back to you 10 times. And tonight is one of those nights. Well, we'll come back to you. And then last but not least, again, you can donate with your time, you can donate with your money, but again, we want to encourage you to do a donation, not just from for women in Linux, but for yourself and others in the community, because we do have people that we do bring on. We do resume review, career review. I mean, there's not too much that we don't do. So it's not just you donate money and it just goes into oblivion, but also if you want to come and do a not a one-on-one, but you want to lead a YouTube day, you know, you can do that. If you want to help us with our social media, that there's something that you can do as well too. So again, it's not just that. All right, D, are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm always ready. I stay ready. It's born ready.
All right. So coming to the stage is none other than Amy Rich. How did I meet Amy? I believe I met Amy at SRE Conf. Is that right?
It's
Is
either
that right?
SRE Con or Lisa. I'm not sure which.
I'm not sure which came first.
I think it might have been Lisa.
Okay.
I've been doing it for like 20 some odd years, so they all run together now.
Right. Right. And there's no more Lisa.
There's no
Um
more Lisa, but we have SRE Con running strong.
right. So a little background about Lisa. I got a chance to keynote at Lisa 2018. I I went up there. I was actually nervous because it was like, I was like, man, am I going to deliver? You know, because I put a lot into that talk, and I just wanted to make sure that it came across where people could see, like, hey, this is where we were and this is where we're headed, and here we are in 2021 talking about quantum computing and DevSecOps and DevOps. And I talked about it in 2018. I could say I was a pioneer on that. I'm giving myself credit. I'm giving myself credit. But nevertheless, Amy also sits, you're the president, right, for SRE Club, right?
For Usenix.
For Usenix, not SRE Club. And so those that don't know about Usenix, I brought this up on our talks before, but if you go to usenix.org, you can see a ton of conferences that actually have that they actually have and have held. I think you have to get the conferences, like the previous conference, you have to come here and get the talks, right? You're not on YouTube anymore, right?
They are on YouTube. We release them on YouTube usually within 3 or 4 weeks of the conference itself. These are usually links to the YouTube videos themselves.
Okay, gotcha.
But if you come here, you can also get the slides and everything else that went along with it.
Let me blow this up some so people can see some of the talks. So you got Usenix Conference, File and Storage, SRE Conf Americas, Usenix Symposium, Network Systems Design and Implementation, ACM, Usenix Symposium on Operating Systems Design and Implementation. And I tell you all the time, you know, about understanding the operating system, the memory, the kernel, embedded systems. I talk about all this all the time on this channel. So I just want you to know, here's another place that you can go and actually write your CFP for if you're interested. What CFPs are open and actually do a talk. So, okay. So now let's get back. So Amy, I'm going to give over to you about where you came from in terms of, I think, I don't think you've been with RedOx, right? You were with someone else before, and now you're at RedOx. So you don't have to go give the 20-year history. You can give you can give I guess a 5-year history, 5 to 7 year history there.
5 to 7. That puts me starting at Mozilla, which people probably know because of the Firefox browser. I started there as an individual contributor, as a sysadmin, and that's where I became a manager. And I had the release engineering operations team reporting to me. And then I became a senior manager. I was the head of engineering operations. I moved into healthcare for the company I was working at. I think the last time we talked, that was Nuna. And there I was a senior director of what I called foundation engineering, which was basically infrastructure, CI/CD, some of our data teams, our security team. And then I moved on to RedOx, and I'm a senior director here again at RedOx. And my scope here was mostly infrastructure, CI/CD type of things. But I work very closely with our security department, and I help mentor a bunch of our other engineering managers as well.
Awesome. So now with that background, let's talk about we'll get into DevSecOps in a minute, but let's talk about your path from, and I'm gonna make some assumptions here because I don't have your resume. I'm gonna make some assumptions that you came from a Linux background or a Windows background or some type of infrastructure background and then moved up at some point, or am I wrong with that?
I actually predate Linux, but okay. Yes. My background started with Ultrix, SunOS. I did eventually move into Linux, and then obviously everything moved into the cloud. So now it's a lot of hosted services, and it's still Linux in the cloud. My team does Kubernetes, Terraform, the company also uses MSK, which is Amazon's offering of Kafka. So we use RDS as our databases, Postgres as the backend, that sort of thing.
Right. Now as you moved up the ladder, what skills do you, and this is just something that I often see. It's hard for me, this is just from my perspective, to be in technical leadership and still be technical and not be a people mover and paper mover. So from that, like what skills do you think one would need moving, say, from a lead position of a DevOps team into managing multiple teams?
There's at least my career progression, and when I tend to coach and mentor other managers, there are a couple different directions you can take. When you're a technical person, you're mostly focused early in your career on tooling or languages or things like that. As you move up the ranks as an engineer, you become more and more focused on what Tanya Riley has a great presentation about called glue. There is some of that where now you're thinking about what are the most important problems to solve and how do I break those down, and now I'm going to hand some of those technical pieces off to other more junior people to do. And the shift for me into management was thinking about how to apply my desire to synthesize information and synthesize things into something that's greater than the individual pieces. So the whole is greater than the parts. The philosophy that I've used from when I was doing system administration up into now when I'm a senior manager is kind of the same, but what you focus on and the mechanics are different. So when you've just gotten into management, you're making this break away from I'm doing all this technical stuff, and you're more focusing on what is our long-term objective? What are the biggest problems we're trying to solve? How do I help people grow in their careers? How do I help a team gel? And then when you become a manager of managers, there's another step back of abstraction. Like if you're thinking about you're a programmer, you abstract away these layers, and now it's not how do I build a technical team that has specific objectives. It's how do I build a team of managers that's working together as a whole, that's working across the company. How do I make sure that they have the autonomy and the freedom to do their job? So I'm not going to go manage their people, but I want to every once in a while have skip levels to make sure that their team is gelling. And then you think about what metrics do I think about with, how do I know that team is successful? So there's that onion layer of abstraction where you start very far down the stack, and then your point of view gets wider and wider, and your scope gets wider and wider. And I like to say in the management journey, but that's also true in the engineering journey, you start by looking down. And when you're a new manager, you're thinking, my team is their people who report to me. And then as you grow as a manager, you start looking out. And it's like, my team is my peers. And I have to think about cross-functionally, what are we doing? And then as you become more and more senior, you're thinking about the business. And it's like, how do I make recruiting better? How do I make HR better? How do I make sales better? And so it's this like blossoming opening.
Gotcha. Now, with that being said, let's go back down to the lower level with the teams. I guess more or less with growing the team, and then having a manager, and then we'll work our way back up. So how do you get, as you're not a manager of managers, you're just managing a team. What do you see is needed? And in particular, let's go into DevSecOps. What is needed to make a team grow? Did we lose her?
Nope.
Oh, okay. D didn't have you on.
So I think a lot of this depends on, are you creating a team from scratch? Are you growing an existing team? Are you splitting an existing team into multiple teams?
Let's go with from scratch.
So if you're creating a team from scratch, the first thing that you're thinking about is, what is it the business needs? Why is this team important? And if it's DevOps or DevSecOps, usually it's the business needs some kind of stability. They need a way to make changes safely. They need a way to get their code out in a repeatable fashion. And when you're thinking about these things, the composition of the team has to center around those problems that you're trying to solve. And your team mission needs to center around those problems. So often when we think about DevSecOps, it's very often in the context of a startup where you don't have a lot of people. And so those people are doing multiple jobs.
Multiple things.
Multiple jobs. And so if you're building this team from scratch, some of the pitfalls you can run into are not having enough knowledge coverage across the team. So you can't have like a security person and a cloud engineer and an application engineer who all understand nothing about the other spheres. Because especially if you're like, we need an on-call team to support this, right? If you have 3 or 4 people and they're all on call for the same stuff, they have to have some level of understanding.
Yeah, and what I have found and this is just various teams I've been on in startups, you are a multi-talented or multi-skilled person that when people say DevSecOps, you are the DevSecOps team. You are the person that's building the infrastructure, securing the infrastructure. You're on call. In fact, you're probably even doing some SRE work as well too, to maintain some things up, depending on how big that startup is.
Yep.
It depends on, and when I say how big, I mean a startup can be 5 people, a startup can be 10 people, it can be 2 if you don't have any funding, but or you're still trying to gather up, funding. But again, that I try to. New people, that are new to DevSecOps, I try to encourage them to go into something a little bit more established, but not as big as an Amazon.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Right. Not a little bit more established, but not maybe a medium-sized company or something like that, but not as big as an Amazon. And the reason why is because I don't want you to get to the point where you're just skilled in one thing, and then when you try to lead that company, somebody else they don't even use what you're trying to do, and so you kind of get pigeonholed, and now and then when you try to break away, you're like, oh, I can't break away from that because that's all they know me for. That's all I've been doing for the past 5 years, right? So I try. That's my take. I love to hear what your take is on that when we're talking about moving on a starting a team from scratch and what kind of skills you have, and then trying to blossom, if that makes sense.
I've seen people take different career paths. There's a depth and a breadth, and usually you cannot do both at the same time. And so like when I was talking about my own management journey, a different management journey would look like you become a manager or a director for a while, and then you go back to being an IC. And I've seen people bounce back and forth between ladders like that as well, because they're interested in both kinds of problems, or they feel like they don't want to lose their technical edge. If you're talking about DevSecOps, a lot of stuff that you want to learn right now is cloud-based. Like almost everything is moving to GCP or Azure or AWS. And there are a few others like Oracle Cloud or IBM. But those are generally the big 3 players. And you need to understand hosted service architecture. You need to understand not so much like it used to be with routers and firewalls, but now you have security groups and ingress and egress filters. And it's both the way things fit together and how to secure it. And what you find is that even if you decide to specialize in security versus, infrastructure, if you're going to be working in cloud security as opposed to application security, you still need to understand how that all fits together. Yep. So if you start out early in your career and you dabble in a bunch of these things and you learn how to use tooling that does automatic deployments, so there's some part of CI/CD there, you learn how to do infrastructure as code. First, you have to understand the infrastructure. You have to understand how to deploy things. And then you have to understand how to secure those things. Nobody else is going to come in and say, oh, you did it all wrong, tear it all apart. All right. You're learning all of these things as you go. And one of the most fundamental skills that I found necessary, regardless of what you're doing, is you want to learn new stuff. Because in our field, everything is changing all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Every day.
And this is also true in just straight up software engineering. But when I talk to software engineers, they're like, yeah, we moved from this one framework to this other framework. I'm like, we had to learn how to do like 15 different new services and technologies and tools over the last year. Right. So it's a lot faster paced. There's a lot to take in. And so if you're the kind of person who's really eager about learning new things and going out and doing research and experimenting and iterating on those things, that is usually the skill that helps you the most in this field.
Yep. And I tell my group all the time, like, I'm sorry, but you're gonna learn a lot. Like we when we talk about DevSecOps, I mean, we hadn't even talked about your repositories, whether you're using a GitLab or Jenkins or Jenkins or GitHub or Code Pipeline or Azure DevOps or, the list goes on. And then I need to do unit testing and securing that infrastructure. And so there's another set of tools that come with that. And oh, by the way, this Docker container, it needs to have some security wrapped around it. Oh, and by the way, it's an application that's going to get deployed. And the application, as far as the supply chain of whatever that may be, needs to be tested. And then that Docker container deployed and tested. Oh, and by the way, there's continuous security ongoing and monitoring once it gets deployed. So, it's all those things. So for me, I think DevSecOps is a sweet spot for you to go anywhere in any company.
Yep, totally agreed.
Yeah, I think if you are doing DevSecOps and you want to go work for an AI machine learning company, you can. If you want to work with somebody who's doing quantum, you can. Somebody who's doing autonomous vehicles, you can. Like, it gives you the ability to peek into anything that you want to, and be okay for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
And if you keep learning
and keep learning, I people like, well, why do you get so excited about it? I'm like, I'm not being arrogant or anything. I'm just not going to be unemployed.
I don't think anyone who has any of those skills is going to be unemployed anytime in the near future, because the overall labor pool is shrinking and the need is growing.
Right.
So if you do dev, if you do ops, if you do sec, if you do DevSecOps, if you do any of those things, you have a bright future ahead of you.
Yep. And you don't have to worry about that too much, other things too much. Now, we did have a question coming from the chat, and I appreciate you everybody for posting it. What's going on? Cisco Fly says, what are some of the steps you took to transition from a highly technical individual to a contributor to leadership? For
me, the hardest piece and the piece that I think most managers find hardest, most brand new managers, is stepping away from the technical stuff. And by that, I don't mean giving it up completely, because you still need to understand enough to be able to make decisions for your team. But you should not be in there writing code or Terraform or SQL queries that are basically blocking the business, that are in the critical path of the business. Because your time, what your mission now is to grow that team, is to grow people. And if that's where your focus is, you don't have time to be interrupted with things that are in the critical path all the time. And if you try and do both at the same time with the same intensity that you used to do all of your technical work, you're going to wind up doing both poorly. Like, your people will not be growing, your team will not be gelling, and you will be in the way of trying to ship code or get things done. Right. And so the very first thing I had to learn was, all right, I need to trust my people. I need to make space for them. Me moving into a management position, and that's different from leadership, right? Leadership can be at all levels of the organization. It can be individual contributors. It can be managers. But to move into management from individual contributor, that opened up opportunity for the people on my team. And my job was to help foster that opportunity, foster their skills, get them the training that they needed, make sure that I did a handoff of contextual knowledge that I had, while at the same time making sure that I didn't become completely divorced from reality. Because if they come to me with a suggestion and say, this is the grand idea that I have, ideally you have a team that's big enough where you have enough senior people and enough junior people that they can help vet each other's ideas. But since I'm accountable at the end of the day, if my team makes a decision that is ultimately really detrimental to the business, that's my responsibility. And so I have to have enough context to say, that's not the direction we should be going in. Or have you considered this other thing? Or when you came up with this idea, did you think about? And that is actually the question that I use most often. It's like, great, show me this design. What if? Did you think about? Have you considered? And so it's getting people to think about their work versus trying to do the work myself.
Got you. So what I'm gathering for you as a summary is the transition from being technical every day, in terms of technical meaning actually writing code, writing Terraform code and so forth and so on, and moving into management. The thought process that you had here as a technical person led you to ask questions when someone came to you as a manager, to kind of probe a little bit more, like, hey, did you think about this scenario, that scenario, and that scenario? But it helped you understand like how someone came up with something, but did you also think about X, Y, and Z? Yes. And then the other part of that is, I guess the other part of that, as a manager now, how do you still stay technical? Because we never want to lose it. I mean, I don't care what nobody say. I still want to have my technical ability, unless I'm the CEO. But even if I'm the CEO, I think I still want that.
As a senior director, and when you manage managers, I am still interested in the technical stuff, and I will occasionally go through and I will read PRs, and maybe I'll spin up my own sandbox and I'll play with things for a while. There are opportunities to like occasionally do bug fixes or things that are not in the critical path. But really a lot of my time is not spent thinking about the technical at my level. It's thinking about the organizational. It's thinking about the business. And if I spend too much time trying to do technical, I can't actually do the job that the business needs me to do.
Right. So now, as you progressed in and you became the manager, who did you turn to if you did, for mentorship or to get maybe some things that you have never seen before, some ideas of and how to handle things that you have never actually encountered before? Did you turn to anyone, or did you read books, or?
So I've often had a mentor who is usually at least one step above me. It's not always at my company. I talk to my peers a lot. I read, at this point, there's a bunch of online articles, there's books. I've gotten more away from reading books, only because I find that with many management books, about 80% of it has been covered in another book, and there's 20% of new stuff. So I focus more now on shorter articles, working groups, talking with other people. I find those things very valuable. And one of the things that I try to encourage people that I mentor to do is don't just get mentors in your own field. So when I was at Mozilla, one of the people that I talked to about mentorship was our CFO. Right? Not a technical guy at all, but it helped me understand the business better and how we were making some decisions. Right. And so as you move into management, or even in the upper echelons of, if you're a distinguished engineer or a fellow engineer, you really need to start understanding other parts of the company, not just the technical stuff. So getting mentors that are in those different places, like sales, like finance, like marketing, like HR, and trying to understand how they think about the work and how they rely on what your team does is super useful.
Yeah, and what I have been encouraging people to do is to sit in on some sprints on different teams.
Yep, that's also really useful.
Yep, just to see, one, how that team functions. What do they have in their backlog? How are they solving their problems? How do they communicate with each other? And then you can garner and kind of shape and mold yourself and possibly your team so that you're all, on a same plane. It's cohesive. It's intertwining really the teams together, so that way you're not siloed with, no, we're just the infrastructure team. No, we're all one big team that's trying to accomplish a goal. So that's what I want to do. These, like, the questions are piling in. I got you. Let's get to Sasha first. What are you reading to enrich and enhance your career growth? And I think we kind of answered it, but you may have something in particular.
So one thing in particular, there are actually a few people in particular that I follow. Sage Sharp tweets a bunch of stuff about equity, inclusion, DEI. I find a lot of her stuff really valuable in how to think about the company dynamics. Raw Signal Group. I actually used to work with Jonathan and Melissa at Mozilla. They just put out another book called Unmanageable. Their first book was How Fucked Is Your Management, I think. There was some definite swears in those books. They have I think a bi-weekly newsletter that they put out that talks about management topics. I find those really useful. I follow Kelsey Hightower on Twitter, and he talks a lot about the lower level technical stuff. He's very into Kubernetes. My team is using Kubernetes. So I try and get some technical information there. Usually Nicole Forsgren, sort of the DevOps stuff that she does.
Dora
her report. And Jez, the Dora report, her and Jez and a few other people have put out a couple good books there. So I try and spread that around somewhat between technical and management.
Yep. And we had Kelsey on. I've talked about the Dora report. We went through the DevOps Handbook, the Unicorn Project. I think there's another one. I think there's a new DevOps Handbook out now.
Yep. The new one just came out.
Yep. So I got to get that so I can go through there and read that. probably listen to it on Audible before I sit down and actually go through and read it. But yeah, I try to switch out those talking points, and I want to get to the point, like, which is, it's just so much that we're trying to do, is that I want to get to the point where we have weekly book sessions where we're reading through books and talking about, okay, what happened with you on your team this week? Okay, well, here's some ideas. Let's go make references here, make references there, just because I think oftentimes what I find with teams and building teams is it's not a lot of camaraderie um on the team. It's usually you may find someone else outside of your team that you're actually cool with. And now that we have the pandemic and everybody working remotely, no one sits on a Zoom anymore and just talk and kick it. And like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a happy hour with you, and we just gonna talk. It's not like that. We have happy hours, but it's not the same when you're can meet somebody out like, hey, let's go get a couple of drinks, or let's go get something to eat, and we just geek out or what have you. It's just not the same. That's just my take.
I've been working remotely for 10 years. So
Mhm.
the distributed companies that I work in, the ones who are doing this well, and the one I currently work for, RedOx, we started as a distributed company. So we try and build socialization into the tooling that we already have. So we use Agile, we use Scrum. During our daily syncs, we set aside some time to talk about personal stuff. We talk about personal stuff on Slack. That's the way that we build our camaraderie. Like,
Mhm.
we don't. I think we have a book club. We do have a Slack channel at work called Hobby Bookworms, where
Mhm.
people talk about, like, just what books have you read this month. And
Mhm.
there's a mix of technical and non-technical. Like, I read a whole lot of fiction because that's my way to unwind.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
So we try to build that socialization in, even though we are remote and distributed.
Yeah, I just finished. I went back and caught up on the last, I guess, 4 years of Star Trek Discovery. So uh, I'm I'm
Nice.
I'm all caught up now. I'm waiting for the next episode to come out. So I still geek out over those kind of things. You had another question. You got several questions actually. All right. So let me see. What technical exercises slash projects do you do to keep your skills fresh?
So, like I said, I do a lot less of them these days. Um, when we were moving to EKS, I went through. EKS is Amazon's version of Kubernetes. For those of you
Hmm.
who aren't familiar, they have some training classes that they have online. So I set up my own little cluster and I played around with some of the settings. I also have an account on, oh, it's not Linux Academy. They got bought by somebody. Everybody's getting bought.
Yep, Pluralsight, Linux
Pluralsight,
Academy. Yep.
Pluralsight, yes. Every once in a while, I will go take a class on there if there's something I'm particularly interested in. Um, Internally, we do both internal team demos. So
Mhm.
stuff that my team is working on that they have found interesting, like we pushed out a new bit of code, we changed the way this architecture works. We do design doc reviews. We do those as a group every couple weeks. The one we did this week, and we had a conversation about how we do testing. And so we pulled up some PRs and we were like, all right, let's talk through how we could have tested this thing better. Like, what does a testing framework look like? What are the conditions for making sure that we know this is operating correctly? Um, we talked through some new tool that one of my folks was writing for doing Terraform deployments using some scripts. We talked through the way that we do some of our Jenkins stuff. We use Jenkins for CI/CD. So a lot of this stuff is me absorbing information from things that my team is doing and talking about versus me going off and doing a lot of stuff myself.
Right, right. Now, you see, you got another one. Are you contributing to open source projects? I'm gonna say yes. You're contributing to open source projects with SRE. I consider Usenix a contribution, but you may have something else there.
So I think we at my day job, we definitely use open source projects. We occasionally contribute back to some of those, but for the most part, what we're after is stability. So we're not trying to go out and do a whole lot of development. Putting on my Usenix hat on the other side, we do a whole lot of open source support. We run two primary different kinds of conferences. One of them is industry conferences, and one of them is academic conferences. And on the academic side, a lot of research projects that people are doing are related to open source. They're related to finding out statistics about stuff. They're related to processes. They're related to information about how people work together. There's all sorts of things. And Usenix, all the videos that we put up, in particular, we do not put any of our research, we do not put any of our videos behind a paywall, because we firmly believe that information should be free.
All right. So when is SRE this year? Or did you already have it? Is it December the 8th?
No, SRECon. The next SRECon is in the spring. That's the one in the Americas, and we're hoping to get back to doing some level of in-person conferences this year. They're going to be hybrid, as far as we know. So we have SRECon Americas in the spring, and then in the summer we have SRECon EMEA, which is going to be in Amsterdam. The one for the US is going to be in California. And then in the winter of 2022, we have SRECon APAC, which is going to be in Sydney.
I try to make that one. Try to make that one, and if we don't get locked down no time soon, I hope not. All right, so the next question was, could you share valuable early career lessons that you, what are, I guess, some early career lessons that you learned early, some things that, I guess, some bumps and bruises that you learned along the way?
I think the most important one is ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to tell people you don't know something or don't understand something, because undoubtedly half the time somebody else on your team feels the same way. And what you want to do is build a team culture where people are encouraged to speak up and say, could you explain that to me in a bit more detail, or could you reframe the way that you're saying that? Also, for me personally, it's really useful to write things down. Over the years, my memory has gotten worse, but I can always go back and look at documentation, especially if you keep it up to date. That part's important. And I use that as sort of external brain storage. Google Drive and Confluence are my external SD cards at this point.
Right.
Network with a lot of different kinds of people, and not just inside your own company. It's really important to do it inside your own company, but you want to build an external network as well, because that's where your next career opportunity is going to come from.
Exactly.
And you can do that by going to conferences or meetups or hanging out with people on Slack and talking to them there. Like, it doesn't have to be in person. It can be virtual, but get to know people. Not only, and I say this, networking is not an ends to a mean in itself. It is a way to gain knowledge and get different perspectives. And if you hang out with people because they're cool and you have things to talk about and you're excited, those will lead to career opportunities down the line. So don't be that person who's just shaking hands because they want something from someone else. Do it because you're interested in the stuff that other people do. Show interest in other people's things. And that's going to get you a long way.
Yeah, I've been encouraging our group to go find an open source project and just follow it. See if you like it. Go to a meeting, check it out, see what they're doing. Even do a pull request and see if you know what I'm saying, see if you like the contribution. And just again, the people that are working there are working on that project, are working at multitude of different companies. It's not just one company that's on there, so you get a chance to network with people. And and again, it's this is open source. It's still it can get tricky sometimes. Everybody's not always friendly. You got to
That is
put your
sadly
filter
true.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to put your
What I'm
filter on.
enjoying about just listening to Amy, I'm echoing, is that you are reinforcing a lot of things that we already say. And so, it is, I know for a lot of people in our group, because they don't know, they use like a deafening silence. And I'm like, how are you supposed to learn if you don't ask questions? Like, all your questions are welcome. At work, I ask 1,000,001 questions. And I say, I might be overthinking this problem, but my way is not the way that they do certain things. And so I make sure that I show up in that way. But as far as networking, joining groups, I mean, right now, it's still a lot of virtual networking going on, which I find as an introvert is easier to talk to people virtually and forge these relationships and stop by to say hi and get out of your comfort zone. And for us, because we do it, we've been having our meetup has been virtual for 5 years. And so it's just a struggle sometimes for us to get people on camera, which is hilarious to me because it's just like nobody's going to come and get you. Like, you're okay and you're in a safe space. So for my question is for we have a lot of new people is, how do they break out of that shell to try something new and do it? And for me is doing it afraid because they want to be perfect. We women have a perfectionist spirit anyway.
I mean, every good engineer that I have ever worked with has imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome. I'm sure Dee and Tamika have imposter syndrome. I bet everyone listening to this has imposter syndrome. That's why you're here. You're trying to figure out how to be better. And it's that curiosity, that drive. It's a double-edged sword, right? It helps propel you throughout your career, but at some point you have to be vulnerable. And this is true like in your personal life too, right? If you want good relationships, you have to be vulnerable and ask questions and let other people in and show that you're not perfect. And I tell this to everyone on my team, from the most senior engineers down to the most junior engineers. It's like, if you are really junior, not knowing what the hell is going on is your superpower. Because think of our customers. They don't understand what we do internally as a team. You can bring that perspective to our team of, we're developing a thing, like we're writing Terraform code. We need to have other engineers write Terraform code. If it's difficult for you to do it, it's going to be difficult for them to do it. And so if you say, how do we make this simpler? I don't understand. You are doing a favor to the customers. It is your superpower.
Yep.
And for the super senior people who everyone below them, and usually their peers, think that they are perfect and they have it all figured out. And no one thinks that. They all think someone is going to look at them and realize they're just winging it. I am always just winging it. I am talking to other people and I'm trying to pass along what I've learned, but I'm also trying to learn from them. And that's from the highest to the lowest because everything changes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I can learn something new from someone fresh out of college. So it's not just, you shouldn't be afraid to show your ignorance, but you should also not be afraid to say, I learned this great new thing. And it might be new to me because I'm an old dog and that's a new trick. Or you're going out and you're super excited and you're like, I've read about this new way of doing things, and you bring back to the team, and that sparks a discussion. And even if people are like, that's a bit too cutting edge, or that's not what we need right now, you've started a discussion and you've piqued people's interest, and maybe in 6 months or a year, this will be something you should investigate.
Right. Right. And I think that's one. I know for me, I posted stuff in different Slacks, and I'm always forward thinking about stuff, and so oftentimes I'll get, we're not ready to have that discussion right now. I was like, how do you know you haven't even read it? Like, how do you know? You just saw the title, you didn't even read what it was about, and then I'll go pull out excerpts from it and post it. Like, okay, since you're not gonna read it, let me post it. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. It's in the article. If you would have read it, it was in the article, but you didn't do that. You were just so busy on trying to brush it, under the rug, that you didn't read it. So I get that. I just keep posting until they get tired of me posting. That's just what I do.
One of the other pieces of advice I give to people who are just starting out in their career is do different stuff. Like if you've just gone through a boot camp, right, and you've learned n different things, and you go to your first job, your first company, they're doing things in a particular way, and hopefully you can find some mentorship, you can learn new things, you can grow. And eventually, what you want is not to keep doing the same thing throughout your career. You want cumulative experience where you are learning new and different things and building on that knowledge base, not just doing the same thing every time you go to a new job.
Mm-hmm.
So work at a startup, work at a big company, work at a mid-sized company, work in R&D, work in academia, work in the Valley, work in a mom and pop shop. Like, you get all sorts of different kinds of experience. You meet all sorts of different kinds of people that can help shape your career. And you'll find that you like some things and you don't like other things. And that can help you figure out, like, this is the direction I want to go for right now. And when I have these professional growth conversations with people, some of them get so caught up on, what do I want to be when I grow up? And some of these people are like 40, 50 years old, right? And it's great if you have longer term goals and you can work towards those longer term goals. But if you're just starting out, one, those goals are going to change over your lifetime, I'm pretty sure. And the first time it happens, it's going to be a huge shock to you, because you're going to think, I had my life planned out. This is where it was going to go. And boom, left turn at Albuquerque. Now I'm doing something completely different, but it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've entered my second career or my third career, or I've done this complete pivot, but it's still great. And knowing what you like and trying different things helps you stay fresh, even if it's not only, I'm doing DevSecOps for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe it's, I'm doing software development, and then, oh, security is really interesting, and holy crap, finance is amazing. I'm going to go do finance. Or I'm really interested in the mission of this one particular company, and what can I do to get in the door there? And you just look for whatever opportunity is available. And sometimes you start over down at, the bottom of the ladder again, because you want to switch fields because you found something new and interesting. And that's really how you stay intellectually flexible and young, is you keep having that drive for learning. You keep reinventing yourself. You keep thinking about, what's next? What's next in the next 6 months? What do I want to learn? What's next in 3 years? And then sometimes you just throw all that out and you start over and you do something else completely.
Yeah, right now I've been hyping up space, because I think the whole space thing is like, with NASA building a Wi-Fi on the moon, and they're building a whole colony on the moon, and then they're launching people from the moon to Mars. And then on the Space Coast in Florida, over Cape Canaveral side, Melbourne side, there's a company called Space Perspective that is launching people to the stratosphere. It's a 6-hour journey. And I'm like, okay, if I am this social media person, I'm like, okay, you want to do your next party in space, we can provide blah blah blah, get you a host. You want to be out of space, I'm thinking all social media, I'm thinking proposals, I'm thinking weddings, I'm thinking a party, I'm thinking, my retirement party, I'm thinking, all these things. You're gonna see people like, baby, let's go. I want to have my baby in space. I want him to see the world. I'm just thinking about all these things that could be centered around just that company itself in order to, you don't have, you can do all the technical pieces, right? Keeping in communication, IoT devices, pictures, the whole nine. But now it's like, okay, I'm in outer space and I want real time connectivity, right? I want to see you lift off. I want to see what it looks like from inside the cockpit. I want to see when you get up there. I want to look under it. I want to look over it. I want to look at all these things. And so I've been encouraging people to look at like what's happening in terms of space in that area. Metaverse is another one. I mean, that's, I know you look, look at Amy. I knew you was gonna say it when I said something. I knew you was gonna like, oh yeah, I ain't interested in that. That's, I ain't interested. Don't get mad at Meta.
I need to frame that classic side eye. That was a classic one. But one good thing about it is this is it. And this is what I tell everybody. The job that you want might not have even been created yet. They might
Almost
be
certainly
waiting for you to show up and say, this is what I think this position is, and let me run with this. It's so much out there. Like we get all the time, like, I need a clear, fine, defined career path. And everybody that comes on and everybody that tells their story says the same thing. Well, my path kind of went here to here to here to here. There's no direct path. Now you can go to college if you want to go to college and you can get an education. And you're like, I'm going to get a job. But really, unless you are going to scout a specific company for a specific job at that company, you're hoping that somebody hires you. And when that company hires you, then that's when your career starts. How long you stay is definitely up to you. Some people have 30-year careers in tech. I have met anybody with a 2-year job history at one particular company. And
I mean, I got 6. I did 6.
I've done 6 and 7.
Yeah.
It's great, but most people are like, hey,
It's not common
24
these days.
months, I'm out of there, because they are building their wealth. They want more money. They want different opportunities. They may get bored quickly. And so, it doesn't bother me that people want a clear, defined path, but I want people to give themselves the to explore. I want them to explore. Like, just give yourself that opportunity to explore a little bit.
So it's funny that you brought up space. I went to college because that's what was expected of you in the early 90s, and there was nothing like boot camps. When I started college, my major was aerospace engineering. I got about halfway through my degree, and I'm like, this computer stuff is pretty neat. And the defense industry is tanking, and that's what provides a lot of aerospace engineering jobs. Maybe I should change my major. So I changed my major midway through, and I got a CS degree, but I didn't really like software engineering. I liked the operational side. I like system administration stuff. So that's what I went into. And then I decided I don't like working for other people. So I started my own business and I did consulting. And then I decided I need some more stability. So I went back working full time for people. And I swore up and down I would never, ever become a manager because I had a very low opinion of managers and I wanted to be technical for the rest of my life. And that was the stuff I was really interested in. And then I saw, gosh, there are all these problems with process and management and culture, and this is really interesting. And I could have so much more impact if I switched my focus and I moved up the ladder. Oh my God, I'm going to be a manager now. All right. So now I'm a manager. And I said, I will never work in finance and I will never work in healthcare because people's lives depend on that stuff. And I don't want to be on the front. And now I work for 2 healthcare companies. And it's like every time I say, like, when I started college, the web didn't exist. Right. Every job that people are getting today was not even thought of at that point. We have the web, we have cloud, we have ML, we have AI. Like, when I started my career, I could never have imagined where it would go or how fast it would change or what would trigger those changes and what I wanted even.
Mm.
So it's an amazing journey.
In the back. It changes, it shifts, and be prepared for that. And enjoy the ride. I mean, the unknown is scary to a lot of people.
Well, we did have one question earlier, and I didn't mean to skip it. It's like the question was, what does it take to get into DevOps? And I'm gonna let you roll your eyes.
So I'm sure that you saw my title is Senior Director of DevOps. And I did not like that title when I started at my company, but I'm like, whatever. Speaking of making your own roles, I went to them and I said, the thing you are interviewing for is not the thing that you need. What you need is this. And I pitched them on that and they hired me. So you can make your own roles at companies.
Yeah, I made my own role too as a director. I made my own role. They was like, well, what do you want to be? I was like, I don't know. What are you paying for?
So to get into DevOps, I need to take a step back there. What is DevOps? If you ask 5 people, you'll get 12 different answers. And the thing that I try to focus on is, and I sound a bit like a broken record on this, but really, what is it the business world needs right now? And a lot of that is they need cloud. Everybody is doing cloud. There are some technologies that a lot of companies are focusing on, containerization. Maybe it's container orchestration, something like Kubernetes or OpenShift. It's infrastructure as code. So like Terraform or CloudFormation or what various other places use. I try to recommend that people learn things that are a bit agnostic at first. So it's not GCP, AWS, or Azure specific. It's something that is portable across multiple different companies, because once you learn the concepts, you can learn a different tool that's based on those concepts. It's good to have some sort of programming knowledge if you can, not only because, and I'm not just talking about I can write bash scripts, which is great, but when you learn a programming language, one of the things you learn along with that is abstraction. And that's not something that you often get in like a DevOps or a DevSecOps boot camp. They don't focus so much on the programming and the abstraction aspect. They focus on the tactical aspect of how you fit things together or how you do infrastructure as code. And then like DevSecOps, you need some level of security. So understanding fundamentally how things fit together. Don't just understand at a really high level, this is how I use a tool that will do all the magic behind the scenes for me. Because when that tool breaks and you are on call or you are responsible for developing a new feature that makes use of something that builds on top of that, you have to understand what works under the hood. So it's really important to get some of that fundamental basic knowledge, and then you can build on top of that. But you can also start at the high level of abstraction, like you know, I use EKS here because they put a layer, they do all the control plane stuff for Kubernetes for you.
The cheating.
But if core DNS dies or is overloaded, and I mention this because this is a problem we've been having, understanding EKS is not going to help you. You need to understand how DNS works. You need to understand how TCP works. You need to be able to see where that load is generated, and you need to be able to debug that. So whichever way you go, you're going to need knowledge at both ends, and whatever end you start at, go in the other direction to try and learn more stuff.
Yep, I've been starting everybody with understanding Linux and troubleshooting, and sending them to Brandon Gregg's website to understand what tools you need to troubleshoot virtual memory, CPUs, how do you know if your disk read writes are slow, or is the database encryption slowing down the actual application? Have you tested with and without? Is the disk encrypted? How do you do that? But understanding how all those things work together, and how to troubleshoot those. Like, troubleshooting to me is like your number one skill. if you're doing anything Linux and cloud, you're gonna be troubleshooting something. You use Terraform and you miss a bracket, or you, or if you're good old Jenkins, if you miss a tick mark,
We've all been there.
Yeah, so it's troubleshooting for me. It's always going to be my go-to. Is give you the mindset of, I always say it goes back to the good old scientific method that you're always using it. It's the number one thing that I probably remember out of elementary or even high school. Is the scientific method and how to break things down into small modular pieces. That's really what I remember about stuff. Now, you did have a question here, and I have a different answer, but I'm gonna let you answer first. Given the sensitivity, I guess it's supposed to be the sensitivity and the potentially career-ending nature of working in tech security field, what is the recommendation to a junior level DevSecOps on avoiding being a team sacrifice?
I'm really interested in what team sacrifice means there, but I can take a stab at this. So, in particular, I work at companies that have a culture of learning and experimentation. And if there is a big mistake, screw up, slip up, whatever you want to call it, that is a learning opportunity. That is not the time to crap on the engineer who made that mistake. And if you're working at a company where that is the norm, my first advice to you is leave that company, because they are going, it's not so much your career, because I guarantee you at this point, if you have security skills, you can go somewhere else and find a better culture. But it does a lot to your self-confidence if you're in that kind of atmosphere where mistakes are treated not as learning opportunities, but as punishment opportunities. And if what you mean by being the team sacrifice is you're inexperienced, so you make a mistake and then everybody dumps on you for it, like that's a horrible atmosphere to be in.
All right.
And there are lots of good places out there that aren't like that. And we are, in fact, hiring for some junior-ish mid-level security people at my company as well. And we try and make sure that if you made a mistake, for the most part, unless you were sloppy and you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, it's not your fault that you cut yourself on the razor blades that we left lying around. Like, that means we didn't have good guardrails. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And there are sometimes good reasons for that. But that's an opportunity to step back and think, all right, do we need to make this safer right now? If so, how?
Right. Now, what I got out of this, as far as like the security field ending, I don't see security going anywhere. In fact, it's getting bigger. And I don't think anyone who's uh, coming out of college, or even high school for that matter, security is gonna be around for a very long time. Um, Even in space. So we're just now really, pushing forward there. But when I saw this, I wasn't sure if you were saying, and you can clarify this for me in the comments, if you were saying that tech, security was gonna is a career ending type of field, and I don't think that's what you meant to say, but that's how I'm reading that. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. D, we can't
I
hear you.
think it is more of that security is one of those critical skills job, and that a mistake could be career ending. Like if you make a huge mistake, it could be in your career. That's how I read that.
Okay.
But I mean,
That's how
it
I
can
read it
always
too.
come up.
Right. Yeah, and again, we dropped the link. If you all want to come up and ask your questions, feel free to come up and ask your question. There was one more question. I think that's.
I
We
think
only
it's
got
a few
one
more.
more. One was, what? No, it was. Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts, advice to someone who is switching careers and is wanting to get into the tech industry?
This depends on which part of the tech industry you want to get into.
Exactly.
There are a lot of good boot camps out there if you want to do software development. This is more challenging if you want to break into DevOps, DevSecOps. However, there are a bunch of super large companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft that are specifically looking for people who have some business experience and are trying to retrain and switch into tech careers. And they have opportunities specifically for those people. They have scholarships, they have training programs, and depending on how you feel about those types of large companies, that could be a really good opportunity. Don't laugh at me, Tamika. But
I
also
agree.
there are some good boot camps out there, and I will say in the security field, especially right now, there's this weird dichotomy, and this sort of goes back to the prior question as well. Everybody wants super senior people, right? But we're not gonna get senior people unless we train more junior people, and training junior people in college or boot camps for security is not much of a thing right now. So the only way that's going to happen is if companies hire junior people and train them up. So look specifically for those opportunities, and I guarantee you there are going to be more and more of them because the industry is desperate for people with those skills, and they are falling over themselves to try and hire those senior people, and eventually they will realize they can't, and then they're going to say, all right, well, if we can get one senior people and maybe a couple junior people in, and then we can train the junior people up. That's where honestly the market is headed right now. So if you don't have it right now, there's going to be a lot of opportunity opening up for you in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and I give the fundamentals are understanding Linux. Pick a cloud. I don't care what cloud you pick. Understanding that, understanding security as well, and then I always throw in just understanding the fundamentals of agile, and what does that look like when you're working with teams. Those four right there, I don't think you can miss. I don't think you would be jobless. Let's say that. I don't think you would be jobless with those. That's just your basic fundamentals to understanding how to be a scrum master. Um, you can go for multiple teams, but you don't need that to start out with. If you want to go get it, that's fine, but you don't need that to start out with. That's just my take. That's just what I've seen. I get calls. I got 10 emails this morning for people looking for DevSecOps people. Like I mean, I get them every day looking for DevSecOps people. So, I mean, it's never ending on that. Now, one of the things I see going on in the chat is talking about ageism. So that's a good topic.
I'm pushing 50, so yeah, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. And what I have found out about ageism is it is company person dependent. Let me say that. In other words, is sometimes it's not the company, it's the people who are on the teams in the company. That's usually what I have seen. And then a lot of the times, like, you look at it, like, I remember when I was 25 years old and working in the tech, getting in and trying to work in the tech field. And I won't say my age right now, but I've said it before, but working in the tech field now, and you're working with someone who's 25 years old, you're like, man, was I like that when I was that age? Was I that rude and mean and nasty? I don't think I was that rude and mean and nasty. I think I always ask questions, but I don't think I was that rude, mean, and nasty. Some of them are just rude, mean, and nasty. You were like, who are you talking to, young grasshopper? So I don't know. I do see this is my personal take. Anybody between the ages of 35 to 55, I feel like the tech industry doesn't care about them. That's my personal take. Because anytime someone comes to women in Linux, they're like, why you don't have classes for young adults? I'm like, how many more classes do young adults need? There's a ton of them out there. But if you go look around, anybody from 30 to 55, it's just like, man, we just gonna toss you aside. But again, I also try to reiterate skill stacking your skills, making yourself marketable. What does that look like? How to network and so forth, so you don't end up relying on just that one company. You can have multiple skills that would get you into the company, so you can make your own direction. That's just my personal take. I'll leave this open to you.
There was one other thing I was going to say about people who are switching careers. When I read resumes and I interview people who are in that position, one of the things that I'm generally thinking about, and one of the things that you should use to sell yourself, is people who are super junior, who are just out of college or have just finished their first job. They're still trying to figure out how to work on a team, what to think about the business, maybe how to work remotely. And if you have all of these skills from prior jobs that you've worked, that's incredibly valuable, because it means that you can focus your learning time on just the technical stuff versus I have to learn how to work in a team. I have to learn the technical stuff. I have to learn how to use Jira. I have to learn how to do project stuff. I have to learn, like, it decreases the breadth of the things that you are junior in and that you have to ramp up on at a new company.
Right. Now, you said ageism is close to you. Now, what are you feeling here, Amy? What's going on? What are you seeing because you're a manager or managers? So what are you seeing? Because I don't often see a lot of women being pushed towards technical leadership. Not from my perspective. Often I see maybe customer success, or maybe even UI UX. But when we start talking about infrastructure and DevSecOps and DevOps, I think the young lady at Twitter was probably like the closest thing I've seen so far.
I find this really interesting, and I've read some of the research on this, and it sort of backs up some of my personal experience. Is when you enter a technical field as a woman, you get to a certain level, and there's usually some sort of ceiling, and they try to push you, if you are white, into management because you have good people skills and you have been doing a lot of glue work. If you are a person of color, they do not. And there is a hard ceiling there that it's difficult to break through. So for those white women who make it into management because they've been told they have good people skills, there's another ceiling as you go up the ladder, and you can usually make it to maybe director or maybe senior director, but VP and C-suite are very difficult to get into because the kind of things that make you successful at whatever level you were previously are not the things that make you successful at the next level up. And instead of mentoring women to tell them what those things are that are going to make them successful, they assume that men naturally are just going to learn those things, and they give them the opportunities. But women, and this is pretty much at all levels, need to keep proving themselves over and over and over for the level that they're in. So there's an unfortunate split in multiple ways there. And if you are a woman of color, it is most difficult to move up the ladder, to move into leadership, which I think is crap. And at companies I go to, one of the things that I tell our C-suite is the best way that you can help diversify your company and create inclusion and create equity is to hire diverse people into the C-suite, into your most senior management, because they're going to help you make changes all the way down. If you're hoping this is going to be a trickle up effect, you're effectively hiring people who have less opportunity to make those changes.
Right.
And the ageism bit in particular, why this is near and dear to my heart, is I have worked for a lot of Valley-based companies, and tech, and especially Silicon Valley, targets young white men. And I have my theories on why that is, and I won't go deeply into those. But
we know. We had a conversation one day.
I mean, one of the things we're seeing right now is all of these old white male tech founders are suddenly getting out of the CEO positions and they're going off to do other things. I'm hoping that as more and more people, like, as we get a mass of people coming up through the ranks, we will start to break through and see those changes happen from the top down. And I think diversity across the board helps us, including in ageism, because the more diverse your company is, the more likely you are to be diverse across multiple accesses. So if I have a bunch of people of color, they're going to think about, gosh, my experience trying to get here was really shitty. I need to make opportunity for people who are not the norm. If you have, men of color or white women, where it's not universal that we're thinking about everybody's experiences, but we're more geared to do that. Or, Latino, Latinx, other Asian groups, we think about what our experience was like and how do we make it better for other people, not just people who look like me.
How do we improve and keep improving on the process? Or, not like, oh, well, did you consider these things, or did you look at it from this perspective, from that perspective, right? And I could even say, like, even through my, you've been in it, what it's like when you walk in a room and somebody's talking to you and you understand Linux or cloud security or a breath of stuff and how people look at you. You already know what that looks like. Like people look at you like, how you know that, right? And then it's the we call it the really what we call it is the peeing game, where you have to get now you have to go and say, well, this is what I know, and here's where that came from, and blah 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 blah. It's almost like you gotta keep proving yourself again over and over and over and over again to show that you're in the room. And Kelsey and I had talked about this too when we did our talk. It's more or less like, stop making assumptions about people when they're sitting in the room. You don't know what that person is actually doing. You don't have an idea. You never know, right? So that was one of the things. And I want to give a shout out to Zoe. I see you in the chat down there. All right, let me see. Get some. I know we got some more questions here. I think we might have lost Amy. I don't know if Amy's still there or not. Uh, and I see actually we said this is very insightful. You are a career changer. You're finishing up your BS, and I'm assuming that's your BS in IT and have some certs. I'm not sure which certs you do have. Um, and I'm concerned it's going to be very difficult to transition. I don't know why it would be difficult to transition. It depends on the search that you have. Indeed, don't forget to drop the link. And if you all got questions, I'm not sure what happened with Amy. Might have been a connection, maybe her phone died or something. But make sure you drop the link. And if you want to come up and ask questions, you're more than welcome. And drop a one
I
in.
had a thought, which
Hold on,
it poses a question. And I
hold on,
mean,
hold on. And drop a one in the chat if you like the content as well too. Go ahead, D. Well, you was cutting me off. Go ahead.
my bad.
No, what was you gonna say?
We have conversations all the time about, what goes on in our day-to-day job life, right? And so one of the things Amy was, talking about is constantly how to prove yourself. And then some people may be, we talk about it in our back channels on our meetups and stuff. But, you know, I think it'd be great for you to tell people, like, when you are tested, besides knowing knowing your stuff, how do you kind of combat that? Like being
That's it.
constantly tested.
That's it. There's no comeback. That is just it's just you gonna people gonna ask you questions. And I always I don't necessarily answer the question directly. I may indirectly answer the question. Like I'll answer it, and then I ask the person, what do they do, and what have you worked on, and what's your outlook in tech, and so forth and so on. And the only reason why, the very reason why I like the position for DevSecOps and cloud security, I kind of mold them all together for me, is because it gives you insight into not necessarily where tech is going, but it gives you the insight into peeking into what what skills other people have, and what skills that you may want to acquire, and so forth. So it just keeps you, on your toes. So when you are at a at a SRE conf, or and Netflix is looking for SREs. That's why we bring on people from Netflix, and bring some people in the valley and so forth, to talk about, like, what does that look like, for you to get a job and work remotely, and do that, right? So that's just me. When you say you hurt people feelings so they won't try me again, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one approach. And the other one is to have a conversation and find out what it is that they do, and then peek into their world, to get an understanding of why you felt the need to try to test me. What made you feel like I wasn't worthy to be here, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's what I am.
Yeah, I had I think back on my career, and I had one boss, and my boss was a she. And she was always on my heels. She was on my heels. And I got this particular position, and I worked for a mortgage company at the time, and we worked with a lot of numbers. And I moved up really quickly, and I was very, very sharp, but she was always on my heels. So one day, it's like after hours, and I'm in her office finishing up some stuff, and she's asking me the same question over and over again. And I'm giving her like different answers to her question. And because she keeps repeating it, and that's like a pain point for me, like, stop repeating yourself. Like, and I had to just finally ask her, what is it about what you're saying? Don't you think I understand? And she looked at me and she had to stop, because I'm like, it's not going to change my perspective. What don't you think I understand about this particular task? Let's just get it out on the table. Because that's me. Like, what don't you think I understand? And once she put it out there, I was like, I understand it. And I gave her what she needed. And she backed off of me. Like, get off of me. Like, let me do me. And it's sad to say that sometimes at particular places, like, the women are the hardest to deal with. And that's a conversation to be had as well. Like, God, get off of my neck for a minute. Like, what is it? But we're so beat up in the industry. It's just like, okay, well, I'm responsible for you, so I don't want you to look bad. So now we're carrying all of this weight, trying to make everybody live up to this perfectionism that doesn't exist.
But I want to also encourage people to read the room when you're interviewing. Read how people engage with you, and and how they talk to you, and their body language, and how they ask questions. Do they laugh? Are they always stern? I mean, you got to remember, you got to work with these people. So if you got somebody that that's always don't ever crack a smile, like nothing makes them happy ever. In a whole hour, they never cracked a smile, a joke, or haha. Anything? Like, you have to read people's people body language. And another thing too is you also got to um also understand they're nervous as well too. So when they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them, because you may not want to work with that person. I'm just putting it out there. You may not want to work with that team. And another thing, because this often comes up too, is just because you interview for one position at a company doesn't mean that you can't interview for other positions at a company. So you may not gel with that one team. It's okay to go to another team because you may gel with another team. That's just my thoughts. Amy is back. I'll let Amy give her thoughts on that. What are your thoughts, Amy, when working with difficult people or meeting people that try to test your knowledge? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, because you were saying that people test you like at every step of the way, and that's what we were talking about.
When it comes to working with difficult people, having challenging conversations, there's a book that I highly recommend called Crucial Conversations. And it gives you thinking about a mindset to go into some of these conversations, and some tactical advice about how to talk with other people to try and get to a place where you're both pulling in the same direction. This does not work for everyone. There are some people who are just unreasonable and will remain unreasonable. I start by trying to think, what is the kernel of truth, or perhaps the useful thing I can take away from some of these conversations? And more often than not, it's trying to learn about the other person and their perspective. And if it's constructive feedback for me, I try and think about, am I hearing this from multiple people, or is it just one person who seems to be bent out of shape about this? Having said that, there are times when my opinion just disagrees with the other person's opinion, and it's like, all right, we're going to agree to disagree. And for the people who continually ask me questions and are testing me, often one of the things that I say is, what do you need to hear to give you the level of comfort that you need, that I am understanding what you're doing, that I'm doing what you expect, because sometimes it's about communication, and sometimes people are just jerks. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt first. And if it's like, I'm really worried about how much this system is crashing, and I don't hear a lot from your team, and I don't understand what you're trying to do to fix it, it's like, great. I can open up those roads of communication more, and you don't have to keep asking everyone on my team, like, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. I can be more proactive about that. But if you keep doing that, right, and we've already had this conversation, and you've told me this is why I'm uncomfortable, or this is what I need, or this is what would help me, and I give that to you, and we go through that maybe a time or two, and you're still acting like that, then I try to figure out how to work around that person, and if it's worth working around that person, because fundamentally you cannot change other people. Like you can try to get to a place where you have a good working relationship, you can try to be empathetic, but there's got to be give and take there. It can't all be one-sided. And if the other person is just a jerk and they are constantly making my life miserable, then either I have to figure out, how do I change my own perspective so that's not making me miserable? Like maybe it's just like, all right, you're just going to complain about this all the time, but it doesn't really have a lot of impact on me, so I will ignore you. Or maybe it's, you're spreading misinformation, and I need to head that off at the pass and explain the situation to people that matter. Or maybe it's, this entire company's like that, and I should find a new place to work. Like it really depends on the situation. I try to start with an open mind, because I've been in a lot of situations where there's just communication mismatch, and I try to think that people are, they want to do a good job, they want the company to do well, they want teams to be successful. And I go in with that mentality until they prove me otherwise. And some people have. Some people are just that way. They don't want your team to succeed. They want to hold you down. They want to spread lies and rumors. I have very little time for those people.
Yeah. Now, as a manager, how do you sniff that out when you, as a manager of managers?
It really depends where in the organization it is. This goes back to what I was saying about networking internally. It's a really good practice to get to know and understand and empathize with people throughout the entire company. And so if I start hearing something from one quadrant, I can go to other people in the same quadrant, or I can go to other quadrants and ask about that too. It's like, are you experiencing the same thing? Do you also see this as a problem? Is this something I actually need to work on, or my team needs to work on? And I try and get different perspectives, so it's not just one person's perspective in a vacuum. And when you're a manager of managers, if you're worried about the people you are managing not doing a good job for the teams underneath them, that's kind of what skip levels are for. So every once in a while you meet with the people who report to them. We also have company surveys where people get to anonymously say how they feel about everything under the sun at the company, you know, the leadership, their boss, their work, their professional growth, their autonomy. Those can be a really good source of data. And it's also really good to slice and dice that data to see if one demographic feels very strongly different than another demographic.
Gotcha.
And also talking to those people's peers, like how are they working across the table? And you're trying to get that global understanding of how other people are perceiving the situation as well.
Right. Got you. Now, one of the questions someone did have, and I'm make assumptions. This is maybe about programming, um, and not about DevSecOps. But do you have a project portfolio suggestion?
So if we're talking about programming, I think this goes back to one of your earlier suggestions of open source projects.
Mm-hmm.
I try to stay away from this for the most part, but I know that some managers go look at GitHub profiles and they see where you've been active and where you've been contributing to. Some of those same people are looking for specific code that you have committed, and they downplay things like documentation contributions. If I'm going to look at things like that, I want a holistic view of are you contributing and what are you contributing? And sometimes documentation is just as important as the code. I try and stay away from that, though, because this biases towards people who often have the luxury of free time to go do these things, that it's not part of their normal job, because a lot of normal jobs you are not contributing back to open source. It's something you do in your free time. Many people do not have free time because they're taking care of their children or their pets or their parents, or they're volunteering for something that's more meaningful to them, like a food bank, or, you know, or they're going to school and working a job and they don't have time to toss something up into GitHub. One of the recommendations I do give to people, if you're going to do boot campy type things, a lot of times those boot camps are, you know, learn how to use revision control and source control, use Git. And you can put a lot of stuff in Git that gives people some information about how you think about writing code, so they can look at that and they can see, do you write tests? Yes, no. Do you comment your code? Yes, no. Do you do modularization? Yes, no. So if you're going through a program like that, it can be really useful to put up some code samples from boot camps that you've gone through. If you contribute to open source, absolutely, that's a good thing to put in your portfolio. If you are writing stuff on your own, just for the fun of it, like you're messing around with a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, that can be a great thing to put in there. When I look at code samples like that, and I haven't really done this in a while, but back in the day, it's not just the code that I'm looking at. It's also, how often do you check things in? Do you iterate on things? Is there, like, have you contributed to multiple things? Is there some direction of growth that I see? Like, over time, you've learned test-driven development, for example. So you started out and you're just like, boom, I have one program all in one file. And then the next thing you broke it up into functions. And then the next thing you had modules in different files. And then the next thing you were writing tests. And so that can be a good progression of things to look at. When you get to a certain point, it's better to look at, or it's better to keep the more advanced things. So if you've started out in your career and you have a whole bunch of GitHub stuff and a lot of it was very sort of junior and you were learning, sometimes it's useful to open up another GitHub profile with your more polished stuff in it and offer that up as samples to people.
Yeah. And this is what I find hard, because I've been asked this question before, is how do you create a portfolio for DevSecOps? And I'm like, you can write some Terraform code, you can, but again, it's back to that yes and no thing again, right? You wrote some Terraform code, but you didn't put comments in there, or you are using you deployed to DigitalOcean while you didn't use AWS or Google Cloud, or did you put any unit testing in there, and are you using GitHub Actions? Are you using it? It gets into that, but you can build it. After a while, I think the code is going to look the same for someone, but now it's, did you deploy an application onto that cluster, and is that application, like if you did Chaos Monkey or something like that, is that application still up and running? And that could be a little different, but again, you're right, it takes time to do that. You probably can spend 2 or 3 months just doing what I just said, to making sure it's highly available. You write an application, you put it out there, you secure it, you secure the containers, you secure the code. I mean, after a while, you just, at that point, you might as well freelance.
So when you do become more senior, and this doesn't have to be terribly senior, like this might be mid-level, it's often really useful. Your portfolio can include talks that you have given. So, I mean, I pitch for Usenix because I'm on the board and I'm the president. But there are a lot of different conferences out there. There are meetups out there, and you can record demos of stuff that you have done and put those on YouTube. You can put stuff on TikTok if they're short clips. You can give talks, and often they will record those and put those things out there. You can build your own website and put stuff on there that you think is important in your portfolio. There are a bunch of ways that you can do that, and it doesn't have to just be GitHub code and contributing to open source stuff. Like, there are a variety of different ways to think about portfolios. For example, if you're an architect, and I mean like cloud architect, not building architect, obviously. Like you can go diagram what it might look like to mock up a type of service. And so, like, this is how we do streaming. This is how we do event streaming. This is how it ties into a database. This is how we cache information. And you can diagram that up, and you can make that part of your portfolio. So when you have conversations about, tell me about an architecture thing that you have done, blah, 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 you could say, oh, well, look at this thing that I've done. Mm-hmm. As a manager, what I have is I have a Google Drive that has a bunch of templates, presentations that I have done internal to companies, obviously with the serial numbers scrubbed off because there's proprietary information there, but like things about hiring people, things about team building, things about running effective meetings. That's the kind of stuff that I put up there. And when I interview with my current company and I was pitching to them, it's like, you don't want someone who's going to come in and do all the technical work. You want someone who's going to level up your teams. And look, here's some stuff I've done in the past. Feel free to go look at it. If you have questions about it, feel free to ask me. If we have another interview, we can talk about it then if you want.
Right. And
so I just dumped that out there. It wasn't even part of my resume. I mentioned it during a phone screen that I had.
Right. Now that's a good question too. How do you get ready for an interview as a manager of managers?
How do I get ready to conduct an interview, or how do I get ready to be the person who is being interviewed?
You're the person being interviewed.
The The very first thing that I tend to do is I go look at the company website and I try and figure out what they do. And I recommend this regardless of what job you're applying to, because if you apply to a job, one of the first questions that someone is going to ask you is, why did you choose this company? What do you know about the company? Because usually they don't just want someone who has put out 500 resumes and is just hoping for the best. There should be some reason why this company appeals to you. And you should have some idea of what the company does and what they can offer you and what you can offer them. So this helps me figure out what my pitch to the company is going to be. Like for RedOx, they had around 150 people at the time. And they were, as I mentioned, looking for a technical director, a technical manager who could come in and do all this technical work, who would be contributing to day-to-day code. And the first thing I said to the phone screen person, I'm like, what's your biggest business problem? And he was like, well, you know, we're trying to grow pretty fast in some of our process things. And I'm like, okay, so that's where I could be really useful to you. I'm not going to write code day to day. I'm not going to do your infrastructure stuff or your CI/CD stuff day to day, but I know how to build teams. I know how to hire people who can do these things for you. I know how to hire people who can hire people to do these things for you. I can help with your recruiting pipeline because I know a lot of people in the field. And so knowing what the company was trying to do, and I also had them run me through a demo. The very first time I did a phone screen, they asked me a bunch of questions and I said, show me what your company does. And I asked questions. I'm like, you know, how does your customer do this? How does your customer do this? And this sort of blew the socks off our CTO because I don't think anyone had gone that deep with him before. And I was asking this as a person who was never going to work on the product. But in order for me to build a team who was going to understand the underpinnings, and I was going to have to pitch this to people who wanted to come work here, I had to know how to pitch it. And so I asked a bunch of questions. Never go into an interview where you have no questions to ask of the company, because that means that you're not that interested, right? You should be interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you.
Yep. Say it all the time. Say it all the time. All right, we're coming up at the top of the hour. I know we've taken all your evening. I know you gotta work. How can people find you on social media? And if you had one thing to leave off with, what would you leave people with? One bit of advice.
So I'll start with the social media stuff. That's easy. Okay. I don't engage a lot with Twitter, but I am there as Amy R. Rich. And that is also the same for LinkedIn. You can find me looking for Amy Rich. I do not use Facebook, so you will not find me there. And I don't really Instagram or TikTok a lot. Mostly I stick to Twitter and LinkedIn. The one piece of advice I will leave people with. Be open to new experiences. Don't be afraid of getting it wrong or trying new things.
Yep, I agree. I say it all the time. Every day is a new day. I haven't even covered all of the stuff that Amazon announced this week. I got to go back and look at everything and see what they announced on. That'll be coming up. So that's all that's new. It just came out this week. And I have to figure out how to play with it and find some time to demo that. So I agree with everything you said in the last 2 hours, but really in the last 10 minutes in terms of
everything prior to that, just ignore what I said. Just the last 10 minutes we did.
Great.
But the one about creating, doing the video. So I do encourage people to come up and, do a presentation with Women in Linux. We have a meetup on Wednesdays. you could do a presentation, or you can present here live on a live stream if you wanted to, if you're feeling froggy. But but creating, some people call it digital real estate. I call it creating your portfolio. Is what that is. That's really you're creating a brand for yourself, basically, for that. And I know D had something to say to you before you get out of here. No, you don't
Are
have
we
nothing,
talking to
D?
me?
Yeah,
Oh,
you
okay. Well,
you
you have
are
to
D.
turn my volume down I'm in here with like a lot of computers, so it's like humming in here and it's really low. And I think sometimes the echo she hears is herself because she has a loud voice and it carries. But thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. It was definitely good stuff.
Yeah, I
Good stuff.
appreciate you too.
And it lets us
Um,
know that we are on the right path and that we're not staring people off the cliff, even though sometimes they think we are.
Cliffs
now,
can be entertaining too. Just make sure you have a parachute.
right.
Hey, they don't
So
know. I'm just going to be standing on the edge looking at them go down. But been there, done that, got the t-shirt in the mug. So, I mean, everything that you said was so on point about, what we share at our meetups, what we share on the lives. Um, they're really
uh,
different.
somebody did have a question for you. With Dorsey handing off to, I guess, Agarwal over at Twitter, how long do you think it will take Twitter, for the Twitter workforce to rebound from the ground shift?
That's a fascinating question. And I mean, it's hard to tell how much is going to change internally with Jack gone and focusing on crypto and blockchain and block.
Right.
It may be that things don't change much at all and that the culture stays the same and it's just, oh, new boss, same as the old boss.
Hmm.
Or it may be that there are some drastic changes that happen and there will be a massive culture shift. So I unfortunately don't have a crystal ball that I can pull out and tell you when to sell your stock or not.
Do you do investments, Amy?
um, I am mostly of the school of put it into mutual funds and come back 40 years
ETFs,
later. And
ETFs, and come back later.
yeah, pretty much over time, it's gone up and to the right
Right.
significantly. I will say that there are a few opportunities where it's like I'm thinking this could really explode. I'll just dump a little bit of money in here and we'll see what happens.
Right.
So like crypto, for example, I have many things to say about crypto. I'm deeply concerned about the ethics and what it's doing to our planet. But I also know that things change very rapidly, and maybe we'll get to the point where we can make this a green thing and it's not destroying our supply chain and the environment and everything else. So, I dump a little money into that in 15 years. Who
We'll see.
knows?
Right.
But
We'll see.
I do not day trade because I do not have the time and the patience for that, and I don't want to pay capital gains tax.
Right. Now, when it comes to, uh, uh, I guess your ETFs, I'm assuming, and I talk about this on our other show, Tech Stocks and Jobs, where we get into kings and aristocrats, where the kings are around for 50 years, companies that have been paying dividends over 50 years. Aristocrats are companies that have been paying over 25 years. Everybody in the chat should know this. Everybody who's on here should know these things. But I look at what companies are going to be here for the next, who's going to make the next aristocrat move where they're going to get on the list for the next 25 years. Like, what companies are those? Tesla is still a baby right now. So, Tesla got some time, but I can honestly say Nvidia has been doing quite well. in my portfolio.
That's because it's being driven by crypto. Everybody wants those cards so they can do crypto mining.
Yeah, I'm 155% up. I don't mind. I'm not troubled by that. I'm excited, but yeah, we'll have to sit down and have a discussion about that. I did want you to talk about I know you mentioned some openings at RedOx, and then also you didn't talk about Usenix, right? You mentioned it, but it's kind of like, yeah, I want to give you to get a chance to highlight, the things that you do. So I'm gonna give you that, and then you can get out of here.
So at RedOx, we're pretty much hiring across the board. We're probably going to double the company in the next year. We have a ton of engineering positions open, and we are actually looking for some people who are a bit more junior. So if you only have like a year of experience, or you're like really strong coming out of a boot camp, it might be worth going to apply to some of our software engineering jobs. On my team, I'm looking for a couple mid-career people. We're looking for people like all across the board, though: HR, sales, technical support, security. We have both senior and sort of mid-career, a bit more junior positions open on security as well. So absolutely, if you're looking to break into some of that, take a look at our website, see if anything matches up. We do in particular have a note, a footer on all of our job descriptions,
Okay.
saying that in particular, we know that women and people of color don't tend to apply unless they check 80 to 90% of the boxes, whereas white men in particular will apply if they check 60% of the boxes. So please, if you check 60% of the boxes, or you think you might be a fit, apply. What's the worst that could happen?
Say it again so they can hear you. I say it all the time. I tell them all the time. I'm like, yo, these men come over here now, have but one skill set, and they apply.
Yep.
And get an interview and get advocated for.
Yep. So if you're sitting there thinking with your imposter syndrome, oh gosh, I don't check all the boxes. I only learned this in the past 2 years, or I only learned this in the last 6 months. What's the worst that can happen if you apply? You're rejected. Somebody doesn't respond. Okay. Next opportunity. It never hurts.
And I think Sasha had put in here, when do you know enough learning is enough? Like I guess to get started in the DevOps or get started in a career field, when is enough enough?
When they'll hire you.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is enough is never enough. You're always learning new things. As soon as you want to break into a career, you go out and dabble a little bit, you put it on your resume, you try and get a little bit of experience, like with an open source project or doing a side project, start applying to stuff. The worst they can say is no. No is not a horrible thing. I've heard no a lot in my life in many different contexts.
So I'm just saying, I don't have to tell. You heard it from somebody else, because I'll be over here beating a dead horse. Like, no, go apply, go apply, go apply. I'm beating a dead horse. And for Usenix, I know you talked about academia and research papers. You're on YouTube. I spoke on the call for papers. Anything else you want to highlight? Anything else you want to give a shine to?
So the Usenix mission is to try and advance the state of computing. And like I said, we do that through usually a couple different kinds of conferences. There's the academic focused ones, and then there's the industry focused ones. There are many ways to become involved with Usenix. We also have Login as an online publication. which if you'd like to write articles for login, we would be thrilled to have submissions, and people will help you try and polish up some work and get something published there. If you are still in school and you are in academia, we have the CFPs for our academic conferences. We have shepherds for all of our papers who also try and help you polish things up and make a good presentation. There are poster sessions if you don't think you're quite up to an entire research paper. On the more industry side, we have things like SRECon and Enigma and Pepper. Those are all sort of specific to the field. So SRECon is a lot of DevOpsy stuff. Enigma is about the mesh of security and real world problems. And then Pepper is about privacy and security. And the people who work in those fields submit a paper. Again, there are shepherds, sorry, not a paper, a talk for those. There are shepherds who will try and help you polish those things up. If you don't make it the first time around, don't be discouraged. Apply again the next year. Like, the more you learn, the more interesting ideas you have, your take on subjects. Go back and look at other things that people have done to try and get inspiration. In addition to the conferences, in particular, we have diversity grants for women, for people of color, for people of Asian descent. We have specific grants for students. So we want to make it so that you can be part of the learning, even if you're not part of the teaching. There's a lot of opportunity to meet people and network and learn things and share things with others. And as I mentioned, all the videos are on YouTube. Go learn from those talks too.
And go check out Tamika Reed Talk 2018 at Lisa. It's
Absolutely.
on YouTube. On YouTube. I have to give myself a shout out there. But Amy, I appreciate you. I thank you for rocking with us. I thank you for even opening up 2 hours of your time just to, we hit you with a lot of questions tonight, and you gave us good insight. And again, like we mentioned, like that growth, that ladder, hitting that ceiling, the ageism, imposter syndrome, like, just the whole gamut of information, books included. Even I recommend some people go back and look at older talks. I'm a fan of Usenix, and the other one I'm a fan of is the Go-To Conference. I like some of the things that they put out too. They put out a lot of stuff too. So I'm always I don't even look at TV anymore. I just be on YouTube looking at stuff. Look at Dion. Look at her face. Because she said I fall asleep like that.
Another favorite conference of mine is Lead Dev.
Yep. I like that too. I like them too. So again, you all had an awesome time. You had an awesome person on tonight. Give Amy a round of applause.
Hopefully, there were at least a few nuggets in what I blathered about for a couple hours, and there were some good takeaways.
It was a gold mine. If they didn't get any gold out of this conversation, they weren't listening. Like that's one of those conversations where you just have to ignore them. Now we have to ignore them. If you couldn't get anything out of this talk.
Yep. I don't know. You're getting claps right now. The claps are coming in for you across the board.
And it was at all levels, from entry all the way to advanced, everything in between. It was amazing.
Seniors, the whole nine.
And we even had a Comcast outage to make it very obvious.
And we keep going.
We keep going.
And we keep going.
We keep going. We're waiting for you.
But I appreciate you for the talk on DevSecOps. From a manager's perspective, is in terms of the business and what that gives back, and from even just the person who's not the manager, what does that look like, and how to move up and go vertical, and then how to look back down and actually see what's going on and apply that. So I appreciate you.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I love talking with you folks. The questions were great. I always love it when there's engagement from the audience, even though I can't
Exactly.
see all of you.
I
So
told
I
them
really
to come
appreciate
up.
folks.
They wouldn't come up. We
Oh,
dropped the
they
link.
wouldn't come up, but they are active. They are active in. I'm gonna put them across the screen. They are
Yeah, they
active
wouldn't.
in the
They wouldn't
comments.
come up. We tried. We was like, hey,
They are. They got you diamonds. They got gems. That's their gems. They
yeah,
said
you
there's
got
plenty of
you dropping
gems.
digital gems, claps.
Plenty of gems. We believe in giving you your flowers.
Yes.
We give our flowers over here. So
Yeah.
At Usenix, we call them
plenty of
tacos.
claps.
You give them tacos.
We use Hey Taco, so every time somebody does something great, we give them tacos.
I can do a taco.
That's a valid thing.
That is definitely a valid thing.
That's a valid thing. That's awesome. But yeah,
Thank you so much, everyone.
you're welcome. All right, see you later, Amy. We'll be here, so you can just close out. We'll be here. All right. I don't know what else you want. What more do you want from me? All right, that's right. Tacos, Casey. Give them tacos. All right. If you want to come up, you're more than welcome to come up now. Amy's gone. You know, you could drop anything that you want to ask us. We got 15 more minutes and then we out of here. So if you want to come up, that's cool. If you don't want to come up, we can always close out. You know, but I just want to make sure you got a chance to see the opportunities. Check out Amy online. Don't forget to check out Usenix, and so you can see what people, you know, what how people put their talks together. I've given you some insight on that as well, on how to put those talks together. And on top of that, make sure you make sure that you um if you're gonna put a talk together, the easiest way for us to review it is actually uh I prefer for you to do it at a meetup and not here on YouTube, or where you got a lot of eyes on you. But at our meetup, we can critique your opening, we can critique your topic, and what they're looking for, especially when it comes to CFPs. We had this same conversation when it came down to with Kelsey, how people like what we just the only way we can get on stage if we are applying to get on stage, and also making sure that we are also in the in the room, right? You can't get in the room if you don't try to enter. So, you know, we need to make sure that we try to enter the room. You know, it's just one of those things. The other one is when it comes down to the conferences, is you got to apply for the grants. You gotta apply. If you don't apply, you know, how do you know if you can go or not? All right, you got to apply for the grants to go to these conferences. Is And that's where you begin and get your network on. That's how I got started. I just applied to my first conference was an open source conference. It was the Linux Foundation conference. And actually, before that, I just went up on a lightning talk, and I was like, "Oh man, what am I going to discuss for 5 minutes with 15 slides?" And they got to be impactful, right? And then once you get there, you realize that it didn't have to even be technical. It Some people were doing talks about books, some people were doing talks about cats, some people were doing talks about their toes. I mean,
Totally random stuff.
totally random, right? So you are in control um uh when it comes down to those talks, and you're in control of of uh of being creative, right? So you can be creative, you could talk about your journey and so forth, and you don't always have to go to big conferences and talk. Meetup.com is another place where you can give talks. where you can find a place to give talks, and as well as um, Toastmasters. That's another place where you can give a talk on something, where you can practice your speaking and so forth. So, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Once you get out there, like, let me tell you, when it still happens to me when I go get up in front of the room and talk, my hands get very, very sweaty, my armpits get sweaty, my mouth gets dry, and then my stomach starts to bubbling, and then once all that passes, the first 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm you in it now, T. What you gonna do? You in it? You in here now? So, um, when I get up there, and the because I honestly, I don't know a lot of people that write their talks 3 or 4 months in advance. Some people do. Get
The well prepared people, or they are recycling a talk, because people do recycle their talks.
right, but most of the time they're probably written the night before. Yeah, me. Yeah, I get nervous in front of. You got to remember, you sometimes one of the talks, one thing is you're talking, you may be talking in front of 20 people, and then from 20 people you may go from 40, and then from 40 to 100, and then 100 to 1,000 people, right? So I can only imagine how some of these CEOs feel when they got millions that they're talking to in front of that. So what, Amy, what'd you say, Amy? One of the wonderful things about age for me is learning not to care as much about what others think when I have to speak. Yeah, and that happens. Because once you get up there, you're like, I'm in it. So they don't know I messed up. I'm just gonna float. Just gonna
Mm.
float through this. I'm more of I'm more of an engaging talker. I have to have my feedback from people, and not just talk all the way through. That's never been my style. I'm more of I guess a conversationalist when it comes to talks. So I try to incorporate laughter in my talk, in some form, something witty, something. Dion calls it dry toast, but we
No, she's corny. Her stories are
like
corny.
look, just like Amy said, we don't care about what other people think. We don't we
And
don't care
also
about
you
what
have
you
to
think.
consider your
D, you're a hater.
audience.
D, you're a hater. That's it. Just it. You're a hater, D. That's it.
I'm a what?
You're a hater. You said
A
you
who?
hating on me. You're a
Excuse me?
hater. You're
Come again, say what?
Hater. You're a hater. That's
Who,
it.
me?
That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's you.
Oh
D's a hater.
no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
She be calling me corny. Yeah, she
She
be calling me
is,
dry
but
toast.
I'm the same person that is on hair, that is on makeup, that is on the editing of the slides. I put the slides together. I do the run throughs. I'm like, I'm Gail. I'm your biggest fan.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when I
but you
say
be
you're a
calling my.
cornet, you are truly a cornet.
See, that's a hater. Well, cornet doesn't sound like it's a nice thing to say.
But
But it's okay.
when you did that, the keynote for Usenix, it was a great keynote, because the way you went through it, it was your tribe, because it was a sysadmin conference. So everybody, every slide that you were able to bring up, everybody was in it, because they were like, hell yeah, I remember when. So it was very, very nostalgic.
It's okay. It's just jokes. All right. We say Gen X, we don't live off
Cornet,
of.
not dry toast, cornet. It's a difference.
What's the difference between cornet and dry
Dry
toast?
toast is that you are just dry. Like nobody gets that. You're not funny. You are witty. You have some. We have a lot of laughs. But when you are trying to do the joke, it is corny, and then you follow it up with the corny laugh, like because you cracked yourself up.
Because
That's
it's
the
funny to
cornet,
me. It's funny to me.
huh?
It's funny to me.
Which makes it corny.
Anyway, put Robert Anderson's comment up on the screen. Gen X, we don't live off of likes and dislikes of others. We do not care.
could care less. You can kick rocks.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad you all got a chance to meet Amy. Um, one of the ones I she don't know, I stalk her sometime online just to see what's going on, what she's talking about, what's going on with
She
this.
she says she's lurking. So she said she has another comment. Is there going to be a new masterclass on stand up? Hell no. Hell to the no.
Yes,
No,
I
it
will
won't
lead
be
it.
by Tamika.
Yes, I will lead it. I would lead it. I would most definitely lead it. But no,
No.
the
Tamika's wit is definitely in the just
it's
in
in the
the
what?
conversation. It's
It's
not
in,
in her contrived jokes. Like,
it's in
no.
what? It's in what? It's in what? See that blank face right there. You can't do it though. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's okay. It's all right. All my Trekkies in here knew exactly what that was. You know what?
I posted it earlier. I did the Vulcan.
You didn't even know what it is. It's okay. But
Do it
no,
again. Bow. See that? Chat. Vulcan.
that's right. Look, you saw how she looked 7 times. She looked like, what in the world does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know.
I know exactly what I was
I
right.
don't know.
I finished the season before she did of Star Trek
That's
Discovery.
because I had to go
She's
to
catching
sleep.
up to what I've already finished. So,
That's because I
you
went to
know.
sleep. That's because I went to sleep. Now share my screen.
What's on it? You're not hungry?
Can you share my screen?
I am. I'm looking for my button.
All right.
Don't rush greatness.
Oh God. All right. So this was 2021. I'm gonna show you where you find me. I'm on 2018. You have to go back to 2018, but you could probably search for me. Let's look.
Do you want me to post the link because it's on our channel?
Oh, look there. Oh, I did it twice. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
2017 and 2018. Look at there. I've spoken twice.
It should be in the conference talks playlist.
Yep. So scaling, attracting and retaining diverse workforce, the beginning and the present and future of sysadmins. So you go check
Because
that out.
I'm thorough. Are you sharing that? Are you on
DU
YouTube? No, that's
DU echoing too.
um,
But the this one right here, I think that's one of my favorite talks. But this right here came from pain. 2017 came from pain. Like how do you build your team? In fact, 2017 was when I was in transition. I was in transition. But I'm in there twice. I forgot about that talk. Well, I got 2 talks in there. And you should see other talks. But again, I would check out these talks on unsolved problems in SRE. Those that are trying to understand what's going on with SRE as well too. That's it. Learning more about complex systems. Check them out. And then also when you go look find these talks and stuff, go look up the people that wrote the talks. Go look them up on LinkedIn and on Twitter and see what they're talking about and so forth. Just so you can get some insight as to like what they've been through, how did they come up with the talk. It just gives you a little bit more insight about them. And then you might even like the companies that they're working with. And some people are out on their own and they're building their own thing. I think there was one. I think the one that was I don't know. I think it might have been the last day. The one about the firefighters. Let's see. It was a firefighters talk. Um, yes, it's a ton of them in here, but it was. Uh, oh yeah, the DevOps channels. I should post. Do a I was gonna do a day where I go over all the Slack channels that I'm a part of. I think I got like 60 channels I'm a part of. There's a reason for that. Oh yeah, the evolution of site reliability engineering. I think I looked at that, but it was one from 2018. This is not fine. Putting out code fires. I don't know. It was another talk about how you can learn from firefighters. Okay, from firefighting to proactive work. The journey. Here it is. The journey of small infrastructure and hypergrowth. Yeah, this one was it. I looked at this one. Check this talk out. I actually found this talk uh interesting. So just little things like that when you, and then look at, when you're looking at talks, um look at how people communicate to the audience and what they're saying and so forth, right? It might be it might be, I don't, but that was one. Let me see. Uh is she in here? Look, history of fire escapes. No, is she on? Is it in Lisa? Is it somewhere else? I have to look and see. What else did somebody was saying something else? May the force be with you all, Tam and D. Thank you. D, my girl though, she is nice. D is not nice. You on mute. Stay on mute now. You
I'm a
on mute.
nice lady. But I think he was talking about referencing you, like D. My girl is nice though.
Oh, okay.
See how you just hate on me?
Okay. Hey, no,
Oh, yes, you are. That
No,
octave went up. That's a hater mode.
no. Did anybody else want to come up before we get out of here? And if you got questions for Amy, Amy is still in the
She's in the chat.
in the chat.
Amy
You
is
know,
live and direct in the chat.
so if now will be the time to come up, if you wanted to, before we, because once we leave, don't come to the Slack channel talking about what she say, what the what you. Here's your chance.
And make sure everybody liked and subscribed. If it's your first time
Yeah.
with us, go ahead and subscribe, and you can get more of these gems coming your way.
And
weekly.
I know Amy mentioned a couple of books. Did you get all the books?
I did not get all of the books. I'm gonna go back just like everybody else and write it down. But we did. You brought up one, and I got that in the chat. I went ahead and posted that.
The Crucial Conversations.
Crucial Conversations was the book.
I think someone and the people she stated to follow. Amy, if you're in the chat still, is there
We got a question.
Hold
Which
on,
one
is there?
of you
Hold
are
on,
the
hold on, D Block, hold on, Amy. If you're in the chat still, do you have any recommendations for DevSecOps books or even DevOps as far as training? That's the one question I didn't ask. So we do have a question. You said, which one of you are the hacker and which one is the social engineer? Dion is the social engineer person.
Why am I the social engineer?
Dion is Monk.
I'm a what?
Dion is Monk.
Like the man from the TV show?
The TV show Monk. Yeah. OC. Yeah.
No, I'm not that neurotic.
D is OCD, and on top of that, she gonna go down the like, we got a friend. He's French, and he was like, every time he talks to D, he's like, "You're gonna enter the black hole."
No, he's the black hole.
Both. She is the black hole. She is gonna go like, why is it binary? Who discovered binary? Why did they call it binary? Why is it zeros and ones? I need to know. I want to know why is it.
The social engineer is nice and the hacker is mean. That's what they said.
Lies, fairy tales, and fallacies.
Treachery and deceit.
Lies, fairy tales, and fallacies. Seven signs. You know what 7 signs? Just for them, put you in timeout. these lies, fairy tales, and fallacies you telling.
Let me put it up again. Let me put it up again.
D is not nice. That thing right there boy, you ever what do you call it? What's that show? Not true crimes. What's that show you like? Where they catch people stealing stuff?
American Greed.
American Greed. Yeah. D is American Greed. Now why they do that? And why they do it and what they do. And then she gonna go look the person up and like, well, this what his mama looked like. And this is what his wife looked like. And here the
I like
kids.
intervention. I like quarters. We need to know what was the switch that just was like F it.
And this gets into another point. So the reason why I said D would be very good at Linux is because she wants to know the why, and she wants to know if I do this, what is the outcome of X, Y, and Z. So that's why I say, you learning Linux or even getting into DevSecOps or security is so ideal, because that's just who you are at nature, and you will excel in it. But you fight. You fight it.
I mean, my position now is an ops position. I'm doing infrastructure ops. It's a lot of ops. However, it's a lot of ops. I'm opping. But I mean, for me, with my situation, I'm fairly new to a team. So all of the things that Amy was saying in regards to getting on the team, asking questions, finding your person. I know me and the last person hired on the team, which was maybe like 2 years ago, she's here in the States with me, and we've gelled, and I think we've been an anchor for each other. And, my particular project is a bank, and they just are going through a merger. So there's just so many moving pieces. And then there's over 60, 70 business applications that we have to deal with. So for me, like, this week has been a very busy week, and I've learned something new every day this week, and everybody on the team has learned something, because I made sure, like, are you familiar with this? What's going on with this? How can I do this? So, it is.
You digging in. You're going into the black hole.
You know what? I tried to I try to play it smart. What's going on? How do we do this? Because I might be overthinking it, and I don't want to go to the black hole because I have so many other things to do for women in Linux. So I can't afford the black hole these days.
That's what you say. And Savage Scientist said, see, an evil person can play both roles.
He trying to clean it up.
Anyway, but we appreciate everybody. I do what I don't know what is it that I do. I don't know. I don't know what I do. I don't know what that is, but I appreciate y'all for hanging out with us again. For those that missed out, catch the replay. We had Amy Rich on tonight, dropping digital gems. If you did not, this is one replay you don't want to miss, right? And if you're feeling froggy, go catch the replay with Kelsey as well too.
We also have a podcast in the podcast playlist as well, where we sat down and chat with Amy, and she's not gonna hold back. Yeah, that's one thing that I love about her. She's not gonna hold back. She's gonna tell you how it is, and very politically correct about it. This is how I'm gonna make.
All right, people. We'll catch you on Saturday at 11:30. Oh, and if Keep It Techie is in here, I'll be on Keep It Techie show at 2:00. We're still gonna do our show. It won't be at 2. We'll probably do our show after Keep It Techie. Probably at 3. I think I go on his show from 2 to 3. So we'll be here at 11:30. We'll do Keep It Techie at 2, and then we'll probably come here around 4. If not, we'll come at 6. But be on the lookout. It'll be 3 shows on a Saturday. I'll be on somebody else's show. Check it out. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe from this. Share it as well to tweet, and also showcase us on LinkedIn as well too. All right, people, check your Saturday, and have fun.
Thank you.
All right, bye.